I'm bumping someone. I think I got to.
Yeah?
For a band I don't like.
Don't bow to the Eagles' pressure, man. Don't bow to the Eagles' pressure. Gotta stand strong.
That's the band. You can check in anytime you like.
Oh, I'm leaving. I'm leaving now. I have to go out the window. I'm going.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
All right, well, welcome back to the podcast. It's been another crazy week in politics, historical, maybe unprecedented on some levels. At some point, we got to get a week where it's not historical or unprecedented. You'd think it's going to have to slow down. So to help me understand and make sense to this and everybody else to make sense, I've got Daniel Scarpinato, Adam Kinsey, two of the better political consultants here in Arizona.
We'll take it.
Love it.
That make me smarter every time I talk to them. So I just, thanks for joining us here. And obviously, it's a big week. We've got a debate to cover. We've got a former president that's turned himself in again, but this time there's a mugshot. A lot of that stuff going on this week. And I just want to start with the debate. There were 7 Republicans on stage in Milwaukee. But it was mostly about the guy that wasn't there, Donald Trump. But as far as the debate went, I want to start with Daniel. What was your main takeaway from that?
Well, I was actually, it was interesting. I was surprised at how big the crowd was. I wasn't expecting it to be like an arena event like that. I don't think we've seen that before. I actually think it is a strong field. I think that there were some really good moments for different candidates in there. I think you're right. I mean, as Brett Baer put it, the elephant not in the room was Donald Trump. And, in many ways, when you look at these early states, when you look at the national polling, the delta between President Trump and all the other candidates is pretty wide. So I think it's kind of hard at this point to really know what to make of this event and this debate and how much all of it kind of matters in the scheme of the primary.
Yeah, and I'm betting Adam's got a different take on after watching that debate, his thoughts on this.
I think Donald Trump was the clear winner, and it's impressive when you can win something you don't show up to. The rest of the field, I understand your position. It's your job to defend them, Daniel, and I don't envy that job.
Well, I actually believe it.
Oh, good, great, excellent, even better. I find that hard to believe, but that's your prerogative.
Which part of what I said?
I don't think it's a uniquely strong field. I think the clear winner from the people who were actually there, Ramaswamy, was the avatar. He was the stand-in for Donald Trump. And I think when his entire case for being elected is that he is the most like Donald Trump, well, Donald Trump's in the race. He's winning the race. He's going to win the race. So I'm not sure which voters he expects to pull in. I don't think you convinced anybody that I don't think DeSantis did anything of note at all. And considering he's supposed to be the actual challenger, he made absolutely no moves whatsoever. I think Nikki Haley was talking to a general election electorate in a Republican primary debate, which is a choice. I think Chris Christie continues to sort of tilt at windmills. And so none of them really made a compelling argument for why they are a better choice than Donald Trump. And I think ultimately this entire primary is a referendum on Donald Trump and on where the party is going. So as a Democrat, I'm thrilled to see Trump still have an absolute stranglehold on the party and on the primary, even though he wasn't even there. I just think that for about 25% of the voting population, the Republican primary voters, they've got their guy, and they're very happy with him. The rest of the American people are really tired of Trump. They're tired of Trump's policies, and all we saw were different variations of Trump's policies, even from the folks who are supposedly the Trump detractors on that stage. None of them made a compelling argument. None of them seemed to really have their whole heart in the idea that I am a Trump alternative. And so from my position, ecstatic to see that. But I think for the long-term health of your party, I'm surprised to see that you didn't cringe throughout the whole thing, to be honest.
Well, I'm not being partisan when I say that I think it was a strong field and people had good moments. I watched all the debates in 2019 and 2020 between the Democrats, and while I didn't agree with much of what was said, I appreciated that. I think Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, the list goes on. There were some really strong contenders. I mean, we've got some really accomplished folks on this stage, and I think they did have some very strong moments. I think it's much stronger than the Democratic field for president.
There is no Democratic field for president. We have a Democratic
Exactly.
president, and that's that.
We have a president who I think I would be careful what you wish for. I mean, a lot of what you're saying sounds like we're playing a tape from 2016.
Well, I do want to bring up something. I mean, Adam got brought up this notion, and I'll ask you. I mean, most of the people on the stage, Chris Christie is the exception, won't criticize Donald Trump. In fact, they support Donald Trump. And if you're on that stage, why are you running for president? If you can't criticize the front runner or disagree with him and say you'll support him, I mean, why are you running?
Well, I heard multiple people critical to varying degrees. I think Nikki Haley had a few lines in there. I mean, I think clearly Pence is positioning himself in a different spot than some of the other candidates. But the fact of the matter is that I think there are a lot of folks who are supportive of President Trump within the Republican Party. So I think you're seeing that play out in how candidates are trying to navigate their way through this.
And I understand what your line about this feels like 2016. Be careful what I wish for. I know where you're going with that, and I can appreciate you saying it. The difference now is that now we have a record to run on. Now we see what 4 years of Donald Trump looks like, and I think the overwhelming majority of the American people don't want to see that. So I think what as a Democrat, I get excited when I hear that Kari Lake's going to run for the U.S. Senate. I get excited when I think that Donald Trump's going to be the top of their ticket, because I know that Arizona voters reject that kind of extremism. So looking into 2024, if I see Donald Trump and Kari Lake on the top of your party's ticket, I feel pretty good, even though the majority of voters are still Republican in Arizona. We're able to get some wins against the Kari Lakes and the Donald Trump. So that's obviously where we're.
Yeah, but Adam, these races are I mean, no one's winning in blowouts. And so if I were you, I would wish for the best people from both parties, because this is going to be another 10,000 vote race in Arizona. All of these are. I got news for you. If it's Kari Lake versus Ruben Gallego, nobody's winning in a blowout.
Oh, sure. No, I absolutely agree with you. But I think the way that, this is still there's still 168,000 more Republicans than Democrats in Arizona. So our best electability chances are when the Republicans choose extreme candidates. When they don't choose extreme candidates, or candidates that are not perceived as extreme, Juan Ciscomani is a great example of this. They were able to be successful. But if you have folks that are identified as MAGA Republicans, that helps Democrats get elected. So I understand from a small d democracy, yes, I should be rooting for the best people on both sides of the aisle, but the best people in the Republican primary haven't won a whole lot of primaries lately. So I can't get too excited about,
So you don't think anybody on that stage performed well?
Oh, I absolutely think the leader. I think Mike Pence did very well. Mike Pence is a sober, voice of reason on that stage. With an electorate though that doesn't really want that. Mm-hmm. The electorate wants Donald Trump. They want that. They don't want sober, sane, rational thinking. But But yeah, I think Pence did very well. I think Christie is continuing to do as well as he can do. I think it's more of a moral campaign for him than anything. So yeah, I think there are definitely some bright spots. But at the end of the day, that was a debate full of sound and fury, signifying nothing because nothing changed whatsoever.
Yeah, but I thought Nikki Haley channeled her inner Margaret Thatcher.
She quoted Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, I mean, I thought she had some phenomenal moments. No matter what your position is on Ukraine, I think that she clearly grabbed the microphone, ran with it, and really showed herself there. I thought Ron DeSantis had some phenomenal moments as well.
How about Ramaswamy?
Well, he's extremely talented.
I mean, would you agree that he won the debate other than Donald Trump?
I didn't come out of it with a clear person who won. I actually think that that's kind of like a 2012 way of looking at these. I mean, this is going to be, I think that what really matters now, and we saw this frankly in the Arizona race with Kari Lake, is what matters is kind of a constant flow of video and communication from candidates. And I think that's where Ramaswamy, how do you say his name?
Ramaswamy.
There you go. I think that's where he is being very effective, and he's very compelling on television, and I think that really matters.
Well, and I'm going to agree with Daniel on this too, because I think you see a lot of that still like who won the debate, and I think that is kind of an antiquated way to kind of look at these things. What I am always interested in why I think Ramaswamy had a really good night is he got a lot of attention. Oh, yeah. He was in the headlines on on all the news sites and in social media and whatnot, and he did that because he was the proxy for an absent Donald Trump, for lack of a better term.
That's exactly right. And isn't it interesting that the everybody on that stage ganged up on Ramaswamy pretty quickly when he identified himself basically as the Trump stand-in. But if Trump himself were on that stage, they would have taken it much easier on him because you cannot win a Republican primary right now going after Donald Trump. Yeah. And so I think Ramaswamy definitely had the best night. You're right. Maybe there are no winners. I would argue that Donald Trump still won the debate, but
no, I wasn't taking a shot at you.
No, but there were some bright spots. I think Ramaswamy, if Donald Trump decides he doesn't want to run, he's auditioning for the part himself, and he looked pretty good doing it.
Well, and also, I mean, the Republican coalition has changed. I mean, we saw that again here in Arizona. I mean, I think he's appealing to a lot of young people, and there's a lot of young people. There's a lot of new voters in the Republican Party. I mean, if you look at the Republican primary here for our governor's race, Karen Robeson blew it out of the park with people 65 and up. But there's a lot of new people, including people who voted for Barack Obama, who are part of the Republican coalition now and who vote in primaries.
So, did Donald Trump? Adam said he's had the best night, had basically won that, and he definitely was the topic of conversation, either subtext of that entire debate. He also had an interview with Tucker Carlson that he timed to go at the same time as the debate, and he dominated the news cycle the next day with him turning himself in Fulton County in Georgia. I mean, it's still the entire primary is still about Donald Trump, regardless of where you go. I mean, is there any world in which that changes? Because I don't think there's a lot of room for the people that were on that debate stage until the conversation stops being about him.
Yeah, well, and I'm teasing Adam a little bit on the 2016 thing, but I do feel like the Democrats, and in many ways the media, are kind of falling into the same trap for themselves that they did almost 8 years ago, and it's helping Trump. So let's not kid ourselves. President Biden isn't some juggernaut, and if
nobody is accusing him of being that here,
if this is a race between Biden and Trump, it's going to come down to 3 or 4 states and a few thousand votes in each one.
So are you saying basically like these indictments are the new like speeches that he gave in 2016?
That's the difference, though. And you're right. The media is falling into the trap. But what are you going to not talk about? The 91 criminal charges and the 4 different indictments?
No, the media's got to report it. But
to.
the I think that what's happening with these county prosecutions and stuff, I think that it's all feeding into it, and when you've got people, I mean, can you imagine if here in Maricopa County you had a Republican run for county attorney on a platform of prosecuting President Biden and then getting elected? I mean, that's what's happening in these places, and I think that it is all the political reality of it. I'm not an attorney, but the political reality, which is what you're asking, is that Donald Trump's in the news. It's motivating the Republican base around him, and it is also, I think, further dividing the electorate. And I just don't see a scenario under which this is a slam dunk election in either way.
I would also point out that President Biden did not try to overturn an election, so you can't just throw out if somebody ran on the.
What if they ran on? I'm gonna go after Hunter Biden. If somebody runs on that, gets elected on that, and then actually follows through on it, don't you think maybe people would say, well, that's political?
I think it's a little bit different. I think what Hunter Biden did and what President Trump did, apples to
I'm not comparing
giant
those
grapefruits.
two. I'm just saying I think that the what's happening with some of these prosecutions to a lot of people just reeks of politics, and it's helping the former president
to
in
about
this race.
25% of the population. The same people that think President Obama was born in Kenya, the same people that think that they will vote for Donald Trump if he is in a jail cell. That 25% of the American electorate, the Republican primary voters, are absolutely deciding the fate of the Republican Party. And
Well, I don't
gotta scare the
believe
hell out of you.
Obama was born in Kenya, but I do think some of these things are politically driven, and I think we're fooling ourselves if we don't admit that. And it clearly is having an impact in this race. And I think the Democrats are thinking all of this is going to line up for them. They're going to do this, they're going to do that, and Biden's going to, win like in a Ronald Reagan, every state's going to be.
No,
I don't
blue,
think
and
that's
not what's
possible.
gonna happen.
That's impossible.
We don't think
man.
that. I've got news for you.
Yeah, that's never going to
We're
happen.
not that
again.
delusional. Come on.
Well, it feels like that. Not when I hear the left talking about this race, it's like it's already over.
Well,
and Biden's in his
it's-
second
well,
term.
we can. The Republican primary is already over. I think that's the big thing, and we know that we match up well against Trump, and so I don't think anybody thinks we're going to run away with this, but I think we know that he's going to be the candidate. We know it's going to be a rematch, and we like our chances because of that. I don't think we're going to run away with 40 states.
So let me ask you. Let me ask you this. Person we haven't really brought up is Ron DeSantis. And
I brought him up.
Yeah, you brought him up a little bit, but like he was supposed to be the second coming.
Was he there?
He was there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was there. But what has he done wrong?
How much
I
time
mean,
do we
that's
have,
that's an assumptive question, but like he was supposed to be the second coming. But what has he done wrong politically that we're not really talking about him much? And his popularity seems to be dropping. He's having problems with his campaign. What's the issue?
It's a little like the question I asked about Ramaswamy. Like, what is this guy who's basically playing Donald Trump on stage? What's his plan? Trump is still running. So if DeSantis is trying to back up every policy of President Trump, he's still running. You've got to make a differentiation, not be a cheerleader. So the only thing really that DeSantis in that unhinged video showed was that he is more homophobic than President Trump was.
Give me a break.
I mean, that video, the DeSantis video, was a little rough. I mean, it just came across as, I am President Trump, but I'm going to protect your kids from the groomers. I mean, it doesn't seem to be a lot of daylight between his positions and Trump's positions. And the one thing that he used to differentiate himself was being a little more hardcore on LGBTQ issues. Am I misreading that?
Yeah, I think you're misreading it, and I think that's a kind of a over the top criticism to make. I don't agree with that, but I do think that DeSantis is still in a strong position. I mean, you basically have Trump, DeSantis, and then everybody else, and he's the only person who is, for the most part, who's polling in double digits. So I actually think, he remains likely the person at this point best positioned if Iowa and these other early states do become contested. I mean, he's the one in the mix.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, it's just amazing to me. He started out with such hope, and I feel like he's almost been Jebified. He's almost like the latest Florida governor who just came out with a lot of hopes and it's going to fade out.
Saying that Ron DeSantis is a close second to Donald Trump is like saying the Washington Generals are a close second to the Harlem Globetrotters. I mean, there's nobody else. I mean, it's just two people running. So it's he's in a position where if something catastrophic happens, I guess he's there, but he's not moving in an upward trajectory at all at this point. He's very stagnant.
Yeah, I mean, here's the and this goes back to what we've been talking about. I mean, what's the parallel to this where a former president is running for the nomination of his or her party? There isn't one. As far as I know, maybe
You probably got to go back to like Grover Cleveland. He was
So I mean, I think you could kind of do all this analysis, as many have done, of these campaigns, but at the end of the day, you have a recent former president who's very popular within the party running, and I think Governor DeSantis remains very popular among Republicans, but ultimately this is going to come down, I think, to what happens in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, etc.
Well, and we got to start wrapping this up here. We're running out of time here, but I did want to hit on this idea of the latest, the mugshot. Donald Trump turning himself in Fulton County. Why does it seem? And I'm asking you, Daniel, what's going on with voters, the Republican voters now? Because every time this happens, it seems like it helps the former president. What's the thought process? What is happening with the Republican voters you're talking to?
Well, it's what I talked about earlier. I think people see it as at least that one in particular. I think there's a universal feeling, including among just general, I think, people who look at it objectively, that this is politically driven. And so,
but how is it possible? In Georgia, the
former
president is on tape asking for votes from the Secretary of State at the time of Georgia, a specific amount of votes that happened to be the specific amount of votes he needed to beat Joe Biden in that state. I mean, what more is there?
Well, prosecutors have discretion.
Okay.
And so, I mean, you can do all this and then say, oh my God, why are people making such a big deal out of it? Mm-hmm. Why is this helping Trump? Why is it? I mean, it's because it happened. And I think that when you look at the history of the individual who's the prosecutor, what she campaigned on, and even kind of how they handled this yesterday, I think it's all helping the former president. And I think all the people who were crying at Hillary Clinton's election night party should think a little bit more about how much they want President Trump as the nominee.
Adam, I mean, what do you think?
Seriously?
Yeah.
I mean, good effort. I'll give
no,
good
seriously.
Effort. Good
This
effort.
is they all thought she was going to win in a landslide.
Yeah, he admitted to felonies on tape,
and
man.
it doesn't seem to be impacting.
Not the Republican primary voters, but the general election voters are sure as hell caring about it, and you're going to see a wider margin for the reelect than you saw 3 years ago, guaranteed.
I don't think anything's predictable in politics right now.
Fair
I
enough.
think that we don't even know who. I mean, I think there's a good chance at the Democratic convention there's a real debate and discussion over who their nominee should be, depending on how this shakes out.
I'll get you tickets. It's not going to happen, buddy.
We'll see.
Not going to happen.
All right, we're gonna have to wrap it up there. Adam, I'm so sorry. We promised we were gonna start talking about. We were gonna talk a little bit about the congressional district race in Phoenix, but
It's not nearly as interesting.
not nearly as interesting as listening to you guys go.
I want
to
to hear Daniel's takes on the Democratic primary next week. Come on,
sequel.
let's do it.
Sequel.
Can't wait for that. Thank you guys very much for spending some time with us here.
Yeah.
today. So, Colin, what'd you think? I got to tell you, that was a fun, a fun segment for me because I didn't have to do any damn work.
No, at one point you glanced over like, hey, this is pretty fun. Just wind them up and let them go.
Wind them up and let them go.
Yeah.
I mean, that was fun. You got two very different takes.
Very different, yes.
on what's happening here. What's your take on? I mean, Dan was making this argument that it's going to be very close. And so in comparing this to 2016 again, what's your thought on that?
It's going to be close. It's always going to be close from here on out. I have a hard time believing that it's getting closer. I don't see how the last 3 years have brought Trump closer. It hasn't been a stellar 3 years for anyone else. I mean, the base is still there. I just don't know how he has gained ground. And I don't know that Biden has lost ground sufficient to make up for that.
Yeah, and I just wonder about the anti-vote. Like, are there will there be enough people who are so anti-Biden, anti-Democrat? How's that play out? Because I just think structurally, that every presidential race right now, from now into the foreseeable future, are going to be very tight races. We're saying, in these swing states like Arizona, I mean, they're going to be won and lost by rounding errors.
Yeah.
We talked 10,000 votes in 2020 in Arizona separated Biden and Trump. Any number of factors can make that swing one way or the other in a race that's so close to that. So
they can. I don't see the anti-Biden sentiment swelling among people who weren't already confirmed Trump voters.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what. I mean, yes, he's very old. We all see the video of him and go, that's an elderly man. Trump is also a very old man.
Not spring chicken either.
No. And outside of that, the economy's looking pretty good. I don't see a big anti-Biden groundswell among the people who are not already predisposed to be anti-Biden. Could prove me wrong. It's just when the last 3 years have been dominated by Trump being indicted for this, indicted for that, he's got 91 charges against him. It's hard to think that is something that's going to improve his standing with independents or Democrats or anyone else he needs to get to vote for him. One other thing from the debate, could we please start doing these without an audience?
Oh, yeah. I was going to bring that up because we had talked about that a little bit earlier, and I agree with you on that. It's like these are, these should be, forums where you discuss policy, and it should be more professional, like that, like more politically driven and less, like sports venue kind of thing.
Yes. It turned into a pep rally.
Yeah.
And with the crowd trying to boo out people who are speaking, which for a debate, that's just so counterproductive. And it would be nice to hear policy statements from all of them instead of someone playing to the crowd and just throwing out cheer lines for the crowd and then people booing when they don't like what Christie says, they don't like what someone else says. It just seems like a bad way to do it.
I agree. But I kind of want to move on to something else at this point.
Okay,
because
we're going to go ahead and derail it here.
I'm just. It's been a long week, everybody. I'm done with
for those here for the politics. This is where the show goes off the rails.
This is where we go off the rails.
If we lose you here, we're okay. We understand.
This is where Dennis and Colin just done with politics. Right. I want to talk about music a little bit. We came across a top 10 list of definitive American rock bands.
Which had 14 bands on it for no clear reason.
And it was a terrible list.
It was not great.
So we decided we were going to have our own top 10 list of definitive American rock bands.
Yes. With a couple stipulations.
Yep.
These are important. If they had "and the" in the title, we sort of arbitrarily threw them out. So
Yes.
there's no Springsteen and the E Street Band. There's no Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. One, I think, who definitely would have been on both of our lists, if not the other two, very likely would have. But Sly and the Family Stone.
And there's no Prince and the Revolution.
Yes,
You know,
which is
so-
sort of why we did it, because that's Prince.
It's Prince.
That's Prince.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know. We'll, if you disagree with us, we'll take your calls off the air.
Yes. Yeah. And the other thing is, it involves instruments. I think for all 10 of our bands on both sides.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't know what you do with the Four Tops and the Supremes and the Temptations, who are all brilliant, but they don't seem to necessarily belong in the same conversation with the 10 bands we have on the list now. It's just it's a different thing.
Yeah. So let's. Have you ranked yours?
I have. I've got them 1 through 10.
Oh wow. Okay.
Have you not done 1 through 10?
I've pretty much got these ranked order
Okay.
in orderly fashion.
How are we doing this? You want to go bottom up? You want to each give our 10 or each give our 1? Or should I just go through the list?
Go through your list 1 to 10, and I'll
1 to
go
10?
through mine. Yeah.
Okay, number 1, REM.
Number 1.
Number 1, REM.
Wow.
Yes. Here's what I eventually landed on. If I were to create a playlist of all the great songs by these bands,
Okay.
I think the REM one's the longest of all of them.
Okay.
And longevity is a tricky thing that we can get into with some of the others, because you have some bands that...
Longevity means nothing.
Yes.
To me, like when you start talking about like definitive, it's like, did they define a moment
And
did they define an era? That's
I tend to agree with that. I'll give REM some credit for the greatness of, I don't know, 15-year period or whatever it was before Bill Berry left, and the last few albums kind of sucked. But all right, so now 2, Beach Boys.
Oh yeah, you have to have them
Yes.
in any American. I mean, they were defining a defining band, definitely the '60s.
Yes.
Pet Sounds, obviously. Every hipster will tell you how important that damn record was because of the production.
And here's, here's where
I get it, but it's still a definitive band.
And here's where the longevity issue gets kind of funny is when you're talking about the Beach Boys. I looked it up. They have 29 studio albums. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
But when we're talking about why they're the definitive American band, we're talking about one. We're pretty much talking about Pet Sounds. There's other stuff. The stuff before it had its great moments when they were like Chuck Berry with harmonies.
Yeah.
And in the '70s, they it's like Ceylon Sailor was good, and they had other stuff. But
yeah.
But by and large,
they were really cool in the '80s when they were playing the county fairs. That's when I saw them.
And when they were banned from the 4th of July celebration at the Capitol Mall, I believe, because they brought in the wrong element.
Huh?
Remember that?
I don't remember that.
I believe if you go back to the Reagan administration, I believe the Beach Boys were banned from playing the 4th of July because of fears that they would bring in the wrong element.
Because we looked up Kokomo and we didn't like what we found.
I would ban them for Kokomo. Number 3, Talking Heads.
Okay.
I really don't like the last 3 albums, but everything up until
Definitely
that was
though. I
brilliant.
agree. Okay. Yeah.
Number 4, the Ramones. I have a feeling I'll be hearing their name when you go through your list.
A little low, Colin.
It is a little low.
It is a little low. Little low.
5, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
All right.
6, Van Halen. Despite Eddie and Alex being born in Amsterdam, I looked it up. Alex was 9 when he came to the U.S. Eddie was 7, so they're not a Dutch band. I think they count as an American band. So Van Halen 6. 7th, Nirvana.
Okay. Yeah.
8th, Funkadelic.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. It's so good.
9, another one where we're talking about mostly one album. Guns N' Roses. I have 9th.
Yeah.
Appetite for Destruction's brilliant. The best of Use Your Illusion is pretty good. And then
There's not a lot of best on Use Your Illusions, though. I mean, I don't know, but like when we said definitive, defining of a moment. I mean, late '80s metal, rock. I mean, it's Guns N' Roses.
Yes.
And
then number 10, Isley Brothers.
Okay.
Long. I mean, they did the version of Twist and Shout that the Beatles copied. It was their song that Ice Cube rapped over for it was A Good Day, I think. A lot of great stuff there. So that's my 10, and I've got a list of ones I've left off that we can get to if we want, that I'm staring at going, how
Not
did I
bad,
get
not
them?
bad. A few glaring omissions, I think. It's a couple of
Probably, yeah.
bands. A couple of bands that you were ranked a little low. A
Okay.
little low.
All right. Who you got? Give me yours.
So number one with a bullet. Ramones.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
figured that was coming.
There's no question about this. I mean, they were the avant-garde of an entire genre of music.
Yes.
Again, and longevity isn't part of this, but they continued to write really great songs for quite a long time.
With the slight caveat that they all sounded the same. But,
So what?
yes. People knock that about AC/DC, but who wants to hear an AC/DC song that doesn't sound like that?
Oh God! I once heard the greatest interview one time. They were interviewing Brian Johnson, the singer, once, and they had a new record out called Black Ice, and I've never heard it. I mean, I don't know anybody who's ever heard it.
Yeah.
But it probably sounds like every other.
I know what it
AC/DC.
sounds like. Yeah.
Exactly. And the interview asked him, "It's like, so why'd you call it Black Ice?" And he paused and he says, "Because I thought it sounded cool." It's like, all right,
Yes.
Oh,
No, it
love
sounds
that.
like an AC/DC album.
I love that. Number two, I've got Beach Boys.
Okay.
we've already covered
Solid,
that. Yeah. I've got Van Halen number three.
Nice. They're a tricky one because you've got they've got the whole Hagar era.
Well, it's Van Halen and not
yes.
Van Hagar.
Yes.
I mean, to me, they stopped being good on the 1984 album.
Yeah.
As soon as they incorporated the keyboards.
Once Eddie became a synthesizer player.
Yeah, it's
wasn't
I
the
was
same.
not very
Yes.
interested in that.
But no, solid choice.
And then Nirvana.
Okay. A
You
little
know?
higher than I had him.
Yeah, because to me, they were the closest thing that I ever experienced to what I saw on the black and whites of Beatlemania.
Yeah.
Because they really changed so much, both musically and culturally. They're definitely defining.
Yes.
I mean, it was just crazy that time. I got CCR.
Okay.
Got one. Got a band here that you missed.
Okay. I have a guess.
I believe it's a bit sexist that you missed this band.
Okay, then I'm wrong on my guess.
Heart.
Oh. Okay. I wasn't going there, but sure.
Yeah, I was going Heart. You're going Heart. I think incredible stuff. The show that the ladies can rock just as hard as anybody else. Great stuff. Now I've got REM.
It's a little low.
I like what I like from REM, and it's not a whole lot of it. I just I get that they're important. It's never connected with them a whole lot. And then Metallica.
See, that's where I thought you were going earlier with the glaring omission from my list. Yeah. I don't have Metallica on my list, and after doing it, I sat there going, I should have Metallica on here somewhere, and I don't.
Yeah.
So on my list of the ones that just missed, Metallica's on that list.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you think about thrash or speed metal, I mean, they define all
Yes.
of that. All of
Yes.
that. And then see, this is the last one. The last one I was just been circling around. It's like
Right.
bands but I've got to put. I think I got to put Talking Heads in there.
Okay, yeah.
Because again, there's that sound, and there's so many bands that just missed. I'm thinking about ZZ Top.
Yeah.
That's a band that I was thinking about there. Devo.
Oh, I didn't even think of Devo.
Yeah.
Had I thought of Devo, they might have made the list.
Yeah, really defining stuff. A band I don't like, but probably was considering. I'm not a big fan of Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Sure. Here, my list of 8 that I thought about but left off were X. I'm a huge X fan.
I love X. Yes.
Wilco, Metallica, Steely Dan. I love Steely Dan, and somehow I have trouble putting them on the list.
I love Steely Dan when I'm in the mood for Steely Dan.
When you're drunk and angry enough. Steely Dan's great. The Allman Brothers.
Allman Brothers were definitely part of the discussion.
Aerosmith. Cheap Trick. And then the one that occurred to me this morning, and I almost blew up the list to find a spot for him, but then ultimately didn't. Los Lobos.
Yeah, great band.
Yeah.
Great band. Yeah. Actually, Los Lobos was brought up, too. When I was, it's like, maybe we should have put them on the list. An honorary member of maybe that's why the original list went to 14.
Yeah. Well, except that list, that USA Today list had Blink 182 on it.
Oh, God.
Which I don't know.
Immediately lost credibility.
And before people reach out, yes, we know we didn't put the Eagles on the list.
I was going to say, why didn't the Eagles get on the list?
I've got a straight out Big Lebowski view of the Eagles.
Yeah, well, I get that, but you still cannot. I mean, they were definitive.
Oh, maybe. If I want the sort of country rock thing, I'm going to Wilco, or from that era, the Flying Burrito Brothers. I think did it better than the Eagles.
Flying Burrito Brothers.
Yeah,
I
another
love
I
the
consider.
Flying Burrito Brothers. Oh man. Yeah, that's some good stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and like you mentioned at the top too, like bands like Sly and the Family Stone.
Yes, which would have been at least top 3 for me.
Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Great band.
Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
Yes.
Those bands didn't make it in because of the and thes.
Yes.
Because our arbitrary
Joan Jett and the
rule.
Blackhearts would probably be a
Joan Jett and the Black definitely would be
Yes.
up there. And again, this is not a list of my favorite bands.
Right. That would look different.
A list of my favorite bands would be very different.
Yes. I mean, we could do that next week.
Maybe next week if if that's what the people want.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're probably tired of us yapping on about about music,
Could be.
but hey, even
We warned them.
Even some of us get worn out on politics and need to take a break.
Yes.
All right, guys. So thanks a lot for joining us on the Politics Unplugged podcast to listen to us talk about politics and music this week.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.